everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone.
Like we saw yesterday, that we tried to the best to slice up the chapters of Daniel 1, 2, 3, and I guess we did a very great deal doing that, and we found some very interesting insights that you can actually go back to from the past video and watch and see what we have. So today we'll be continuing from chapter 4, 5, followed by 6.
Yes.
So likewise, we're going to just start off with the reading. So chapter 4 goes off with Nebuchadnezzar's second dream. So the king Nebuchadnezzar sent the following message to the people of all nations, races, and languages in the world. Greetings. Listen to my account of the wonders and miracles which the supreme God has shown me. How great are the wonders God shows us. How powerful are the miracles he performs. God is king forever. He will rule for all time. I was living comfortably in my palace, enjoying great prosperity, but I had a frightening dream and saw terrifying visions while I was asleep. I ordered all the royal advisors in Babylon to be brought to me, that they may tell me what the dream meant. Then all the fortune tellers, magicians, wizards, astrologers were brought in, and I told them the dream, but they could not explain it to me. Then Daniel came in. He is also called Belshazzar, after the name of my God. The spirit of the spirit of the holy gods is in him. So I told him that what I had dreamt. I said to him, Belshazzar, chief of the fortune tellers, chief of the fortune tellers, I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that you understand all mysteries. This is my dream. Tell me what it means. So he tells him the dream. Says, while I was asleep, I had visions of a huge tree in the middle of the earth. It grew bigger than anything, until it reached into the sky and could be seen by everyone, rather, in the world. Its leaves were beautiful, and it was loaded down with fruit enough for the whole world to eat. Wild animals rested in its shade. Birds built nests on its branches, and every kind of living being are in its fruit. When I was thinking about the vision, I saw coming down from heaven an angel, alert and watchful. He proclaimed in a loud voice, cut the tree down and chop off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruits. Drive the animals from under it and the birds out of its branches, but leave the stump in the ground with a band of iron and bronze round it. Leave it there in the field with the grass. Now let the dew fall on this man, and let him leave with the animals and the plants. For 7 years he will not have a second mind, a human mind rather, but the alert and watchful angels. So then, let all people everywhere know that the supreme God has power over human kingdoms, and that he can give them to anyone, rather, he chooses, even to those who are the least important. This is the dream I had. So he tells the dream to Daniel. Then Daniel explains it, verse 19. And this Daniel, who is called Belshazzar, was so alarmed that he could not say anything. The king said to him, Belshazzar, don't let the dream and its message thereof alarm you. Belshazzar replied, Your Majesty, I wish that the dream and its explanation applied to your enemies and not to you. The tree, so tall that it reached the sky, could not be seen by everyone, but it could be seen rather by everyone in the world. Its leaves were beautiful, and it had enough fruit on its feed for the whole world. Wild animals rested under it, and birds made their nest in its branches. Your Majesty, you are the tree. Tall and strong, you have grown so great that you reach the sky, and your power extends over the whole world. While your Majesty was watching, an angel came from the heavens and said, "Cut the tree thereof and destroy it, but leave the stump in the ground, wrap a band of iron and bronze around it, and leave it there in the field with the grass. Let the dew fall on this man, and let him live there with the animals for 7 years." This then it means your majesty, and this is what the supreme God has declared will upon you. You will be driven away from human society and live in the wild with wild animals for 7 years. 7 years. You will eat grass like an ox and sleep in the open air while the dew will fall upon you. Then you will admit that the supreme God controls all humanity and that he can give them to anyone he chooses. The angels ordered the stump to be left in the ground. This means that you will become king after when you acknowledge that God rules all of the world. So then, your majesty, follow my advice. Stop sinning, do what is right, and be merciful to the poor. Then you will continue to be prosperous. All this did happen to King Belshazzar. Only 12 months later, while he was walking about on the roof of his royal palace in Babylon, he said, "Look how great Babylon is. I built it as my capital city to display my power and might, my glory and majesty." Before the words were out of his mouth, a voice spoke from heaven. "King Nebuchadnezzar, listen to what I say. Your royal power is now taken away from you. You will be driven away from human society, live with the wild animals, and eat grass like an ox for 7 years. Then you will acknowledge that the supreme God has power over human kingdoms and that he can give them to everyone who he chooses." The words came true immediately. Nebuchadnezzar was driven out of the human society and ate grass like an ox. The dew fell upon his body, and his hair grew as long as eagle's feathers, and his nails as long as birds' claws. Nebuchadnezzar praises God. When the 7 years had passed, 34, said the king, "I looked up at the sky, and my sanity returned. I praised the supreme God and gave honor and glory to the one who lives forever. He will rule forever, and his kingdom will last for all time. He looks on the people of the earth as nothing, on the people as the earth, at the earth as nothing. Angels in heaven and people on earth are under his control. No one can oppose him or his will or question what he does. When my sanity returned, my honor, my majesty, and the glory of my kingdom were given back to me. My officials and my noblemen welcomed me, and I was given back my royal power with even greater honor than before. And now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise, honor, and glorify the King of heaven. Everything he does is right and just, and he can be able to, he can humanly be able to act proudly. So I think it's a very direct chapter 4. It takes us on a wonderful journey that even though Nebuchadnezzar had seen all these miracles happen at first, he had seen them through other people. He had seen them happen to other people. You might also be there seeing things happen to other people, and you have not yet learnt your very great lesson that you should learn by right.
Yes.
So, because of that, he did not quite believe himself. Even as he said, no, the God of Daniel is a great God, he could see with the signs that, okay, he's a great God, but because I have not had my own encounter with him, why should I believe that? So when he now has his own encounter with God, that he gets told by Daniel that, King, this is what is going to happen. And he waits and he waits and he waits and he dismisses it at last. And then finally it happens. He's there and feeling proud about his kingdom, thinking, wow, I've built a wonderful kingdom of my own. Look at how this is. Before the words are even done coming out of his mouth, he hears a voice from heaven telling him, your kingdom is over. Your time is over. So you suit yourself. You go into the wild. So he gets into the wild, and 7 years.
Imagine, when we look at if we put out a timeline, right?
Yes.
From creation till now, we are shown just one of the few things that God completely hates, that he cannot stand by, is now when man has pride and glorifies himself out of the workings of the Lord. When you now deprive God of what is his right, when you're supposed to be worshipping him and giving him the honor and the glory, and yet you take it up for yourself and make his work your work. When angels became demons, what happened? They were overcome by pride, and they were cast out of heaven. In many times in the Bible, when men of God were now overcame with pride, they lost all that they had. So it's one of the few lessons that we need to take heed of in our daily lives, that we need to ensure that the honor that belongs to God and the glory must remain with God.
Yes.
Even in our daily lives, when someone comes and says, Dr. Brown, you have beautiful, wonderful things. You are mighty. Your response is very dangerous at that point.
Yes.
Because it's better to be like, no, glory be to God.
Yes.
For it is God's workings, for it is through God that I have all of this. It is also written in Deuteronomy that one should take heed of themselves and remember that all that they have is through God. I should find it. Deuteronomy 8 verse 18. And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant which he swore to your fathers. Then it shall be, if by any means forget the Lord your God, and follow other gods, and serve them, and worship them, I will testify against you this day, and you shall surely perish. As the nations which the Lord destroys before you, you shall perish, because you would not be obedient to the voice of the Lord. So what does the voice of the Lord say? You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth. So then in there is now the word of the Lord, which then cautions us all. So remember that it is now his power that ensures that we have wealth. So it's one of the important things that I've now actually recognized about these former kings, that always seem to bring them down. Pride
is very important and very key to note that pride always brings us down. Even in Second Chronicles 7:14 says, when my people who are called by, let me read that. Sorry. Second Chronicles 7:14. It says, if my people who are called by my name, you are his people already, shall humble themselves and pray, seek, crave, and require of the necessity, my face shall turn away from their wicked ways. So it's a father, right? When you have grown with pride, but are willing to humble yourself down, pray and seek him as your Father, he says he will turn his face away from your wicked ways, and I will hear from heaven, forgive their sin, and heal their land. So whenever we turn back and humble ourselves to God, he heals our land. He turns his eyes away from our wicked ways. So humble yourself before God, and God will exalt you. Grow pride, and God will bring you down. That's always, that's the word of God. You always need to be humble. Interesting. Let's actually go to Daniel 5. Daniel 5 is very interesting. Here we find Belshazzar. So in verse 1, we see Belshazzar, the descendant of Nebuchadnezzar, has called for a great feast. He has called 1,000 of his lords and his royals, the wives of the kings, the princesses, and whatever, 1,000 of them. So he has made this great feast. He has wine and he has whatever to feast on, to dine on. So what happens is that when we see in verse 2, it says, Belshazzar, while he was testing the wine now, he tested the wine, right? Commanded the gold, silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple. That's the sacred place in the Israel, which was in Jerusalem. He brought that the king and his lord and his wives and concubines may drink from these things. So we can see here Belshazzar has called out to bring these holy things, these cups, this silver, these golds. Then what annoys more is that in verse 4, he drank the wine and praised the gods of gold, silver, bronze, wood, and stone. So instruments of God's place of worship. Is now praising other gods, saying, praise be these gods who have made gold, who have made silver, who has made. So he's praising this. Then he was drunk. In verse 5, he sees a human hand coming out and writing on the wall. So this human hand writes. He gets shocked. His face turns pale. That's verse 6. So he gets so worried and he cries out in verse 7, calling for all the wise men, okay, to bring these enchanters, truth sayers, the Chaldeans, diviners, astrologers, all of them. He calls them to come and explain and read what's written on the wall. But none of them is working, because God's things cannot be interpreted by man's way, okay? So the king is still very perplexed, alarmed, and the color faded his face, and the lords were puzzled and astounded. So, but there is someone in the palace who is the queen mother in verse 10. After overhearing the exciting words of the king and his lord, he came into the banquet house. The queen mother said, "O king, live forever. Do not be alarmed at your thoughts, and let your cheerful expression and the color of your face be changed. There is a man in your kingdom in whom the spirit of the holy God, and in the days of your father, light and understanding, wisdom like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. King Nebuchadnezzar, your father, the king, I say, your father appointed him master of magicians, enchanters, soothsayers, Chaldeans, and astrologers." So the mother says, there is someone in your kingdom who can interpret the word of the Holy God. It's not any other person who will do that. So this man is called Daniel. So the king calls for Daniel, and Daniel is brought into the king's presence. So that was 13. And the king said to Daniel, "Are you that Daniel of the children of captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought out of Judah? I have heard of you, and the spirit of the Holy God is in you, that the light understanding and the superior wisdom are found in you." We should understand Daniel was a man of prayer, that at all times his thoughts the guidance of God. That's why he's being praised for all these things, understanding and wisdom. Now the wise men and the enchanters have been brought in before, and they may read this writing and make known to me the interpretation of it. But they could not show the interpretation of the matter. Then 17. Then Daniel answered before the king, let your gifts, 16, the king promises Daniel the gifts. He says, now if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold put around your neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom. So he promises Daniel these royal garments and this gold and this whatever he has. So in 17, Daniel answered before the king, let your gifts, let be for yourself, give your rewards to another. However, I will read the writings to the king and make known of his interpretation. So Daniel does not take the glory, as we said before, to himself. He says, that's for you. For me, God has given me free gift. I will give it free to for the service he has brought it for. So, O King, 18. O King, the Most High God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father a kingdom of greatness and glory and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all people, nations, and languages trembled, feared before him. Who would he sue? Who he would kept alive? So Nebuchadnezzar had all this power. Who to take to court, who to live alive, who to kill, or who to do whatever he wanted to do, because he had the power. God made his kingdom very great. So in 20, but his heart was lifted up and his mind spirit were hardened, so that he dealt proudly. He was disposed from his kingly throne, and his glory was taken from him. So as we read in 4, you see when he grew too proud, God took away the kingdom from him so that he may humble himself, because he didn't want to destroy him. He still desired him to rule this great kingdom, but he was supposed to be humble. So 21, he was driven from among men, and his heart mind was made like beasts. His dwelling was with the wild asses, and was fed with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with dew and the heavens, until he learned and knew of the Most High God, rules in the kingdom of men, and that he appoints, sets over whoever he will. And his son, O Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, your mind, though you drew all this unto a defiant. So even after knowing what happened to the father, the son comes in to be proud, comes in to do what God commanded them not to do in the first place. We can see from the first verses, it says, Belshazzar calls in for a feast. And this feast, what was not okay with it, was that he is now using things from the presence of God into his own glorification, to praise his own gods, that his gods have made this god and what. Yet the things have been set apart for holies of holies in Israel. They're just yet to be kept. Okay? So that didn't do well to God. So he has lifted himself up in verse 23 and glorified and dishonored and disgraced God. So 24, then was the part of the hand sent from presence of the Most High God, and this writing was inscribed. So this hand we can find out here is the Most High God who has commanded. So this interpretation of the matter, God has. So what was written there was men, tekel, and peris. Okay, men is number, tekel is weight, peris is division. So men, God has numbered the days of your kingship and brought them to an end. Okay, so it says the number means God has numbered your days of your kingship. Tekel, the weight. You are weighed in the balances and found light, found wanting, found empty. Like you have been weighed how much worthy you are and found not worthy enough. Okay? Paris, your kingdom and kingship have been divided and given to Medes and Persians. So here is that his kingdom has now been divided and given to other people because they were unable, because of the pride, they were unable to hold the kingdom God had desired for them to hold. So Belshazzar commanded Daniel be clothed with purple and chain of gold put about his neck. Proclamation was made concerning him that he should be third in the kingdom. So you can see here Daniel is being promoted more and more. Okay, so Belshazzar, like his father, always whenever this interpretation came, they seem to praise God. They seem to praise the person who brought the interpretation, but themselves were not very much changed. Okay, so Belshazzar here says, okay, Daniel will be clothed with this because he has brought interpretation, because now the soul has been calmed of Belshazzar, because now he knows the interpretation. But as the meaning and the inscription has said that your days have been numbered, what happens in verse 30 is that King Belshazzar, that same night, he was slain. Okay, and this kingdom was given to the Medes and Darius. And Darius the Mede took the kingdom about 60, and he was this man who was taking the kingdom was about 62 years. So the kingdom from Belshazzar has been given to someone else because he has dishonored, he has disgraced the presence of God. He has dishonored the presence of God. So whatever God has given you for service of his holies of holies, don't disgrace it, don't dishonor it, because when you dishonor it, it says your days have been numbered, your weight has been found too light, your whatever gift has been given into divisions. Okay, so yes, you may get a lot of money out of it to bless the men of God, but yourself you perish. It says he turns his sight away from you whenever your wicked ways, whenever your heart grows pride, whenever you glorify yourself instead of glorifying God. Even though you may have great success, but you may not be able to enjoy the success, and you perish. It says, what will it benefit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul? So we need to take care. We need to understand what is meant for the glorification of God. And what is meant for glorification of God most is the temple of God. And the temple of God is your body. Amen.
It's quite intriguing. I mean, even when we look at arguably a person who has the right to be proud and boastful, which being Jesus Christ, whenever Jesus Christ was given credit on earth and glorified by man, his response was always, I only say that which the Father has taught me.
Exactly.
I will tell the will of the Father.
Yes.
Which then shows that Christ himself was afraid of being outside of God. Was afraid for speaking for himself. What more about us now? That it's something that we should now also take heed of and look into the way that Christ, the man who was deserving of all the honor and the praise, when he was on earth, when he was flesh and bone just like us, how he behaved. I don't think it's a necessarily a difficult thing to always humble yourself in the face of glory and remember that it is not by you but by God's mind. You know? It's in as much we continue reading and learning more, and it's just ever recurring that one important thing to take up from these verses is that pride, man's pride, is really, really what ends up taking God away from us all. Because I believe that we're moving now into a place in our lives whereby blessings are going to be multiplied. But the key is to sustain those blessings. And here we're given direction as to how will we sustain all that the Lord blesses us. Right? Which we then found that it is by glorifying the Lord, by not having pride as well.
Yes.
and by using that which has been given to us to bless others in return. And that is how we then are able to then sustain all that we have, or God will sustain all that we have and multiply it indeed. So it's important.
Yeah.
And then I will then now go over to verse chapter 6, which is now going to then usher us into the space whereby Daniel is now eventually cast into the den of lions by King Darius. It reads, the plot against Daniel. It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be over the whole kingdom. Over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one, that the satraps might give account to them, so that the king would suffer no less. And then this Daniel has distinguished himself above the governors and satraps, because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. So we just now shown that when the Lord is with you, there's a certain level of excellence that becomes you. That in the eyes of those in power, you stand out most. That the ones in power are compelled to put you in positions of power. You know? So it's quite beautiful when the spirit is within you. Then, so the governors and the satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could not find charge or fault, because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault in him. Yet again, the people of the world are often always against the ones who serve the Lord and are humble and blameless in the eyes of the Lord. Then these men said, shall we not find any charge against this Daniel, unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God? So the governor and the satraps thronged before the king and said thus to him, King Darius, live forever. All the governors of the kingdom, the administrators and satraps, the counselors and advisors, have consulted together to establish a royal statute, to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days, except you, O king, should be cast into the den of lions. O king, establish the decree and sign the writing, so it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter. Therefore King Darius signed the written decree. I mean, these people have found Daniel blameless, and yet they're willing to now go and persecute him on the account that they know that Daniel will be found praying to his God, supplicating to his God often. And as we read on, we then find that Daniel indeed prays to his God 3 times a day, and that after he wakes up, this is what he does, and it is now a ritual that he participates in, which is also an advice to us to spend time with God. Not to try perhaps, communicate and pray, talk to God almost 3 times a day, if more than indeed. We're often taught when the sun rises in the morning, when you wake up in the morning, you pray to God, right? Sometime during the day as well, you make time for the Lord, and then at night, perhaps before you sleep again, you make time for the Lord. Yes. So now these men have now found Daniel wanting against now the law that has been decreed. And therefore now Daniel is now cast into the den of lions. I'll continue reading from verse 16. So the king gave the command and brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. But the king spoke, saying to Daniel, your God whom you serve continually, he will deliver you. Then a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his signet ring, and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose concerning Daniel might not be changed. Verse 18. Now the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no musicians were brought before him. also whose sleep went before him. Then the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste to the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried out with a lamenting voice to Daniel. The king spoke, saying to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you serve continually been able to deliver you from the lions? Then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. The humility in this man, the lack thereof of malice and discontent. He's now yet blessing a person who's now committed into his death.
Yes.
And told him that he must live forever. Blessing him with the opposite of that which he had deemed upon him.
Yes.
That you wish death upon me, but to you I wish life forever.
Wish you life.
We're given here advice as to how to appeal to those who are enemies to us. In the Bible it says that light, that goodness must be used to overcome evil. And
Yes.
here is yet another firm example. Then, verse 22, my God sent his angel and shut the lion's mouth, so they might not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him, and also, O king, I have done no wrong before you. Now the king was exceedingly glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no injury whatsoever was found in him, because he believed in his God. Darius honors God. And the king gave the command and brought those men who had accused Daniel and cast them into the den of lions. Them, their children and their wives, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones into pieces before they even came to the bottom of the den.
Interesting.
I mean,
Interesting. I can't just imagine a whole human being before you're even dropped.
onto the ground.
These lions have already feasted on you.
And your whole family, wives and children.
It's not one person, maybe they're feasting on, but they're feasting on many people. But before you're even dropped, you're all done.
This shows us that for that entire
Yes.
night, those lions were hungry.
Yes. And the size, I can imagine, it was giant lions. And Daniel, just the small man, was in between these lions.
I mean, we were speaking the other day of how in the animal kingdom, the lion is his king.
Yeah.
It presides over all. Right?
Yes.
So then in the den, it shows us that there was a spirit, a presence that was greater than the king there in its den. That the lion's hunger was satiated, that their mouths were closed, and that they humbled themselves before the spirit, this being that was within them. That Daniel was left unscathed. Beautiful. Verse 25. The king Darius wrote to all people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom, men must tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and steadfast God. His kingdom is the one which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall endure to the end. He delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. Who has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions? So Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Beautiful.
It shows no matter what kingdom, no matter what ruler was in power. Because I was so interested when when it says nothing was found to bind Daniel to apart from his worship his God.
Definitely.
Apart from truth, apart from righteousness of his God. And then when he asked him, did your God save you? Then the answer of Daniel is like, I was innocent before my God and before the king. Before men, and before the Most High, is that it remained with the attitude of worship. When he says, pray for your enemies, when you pray for your enemies, you let that battle away from yourself and you give it to God. So you are not guilty against men, and you're not guilty before God. To bless is to give thanks. So Daniel here, it still shows the spirit is that he's still giving thanks to both the king, because in Romans 13 it says obey leadership because it comes from God. Okay, so whether it was Nebuchadnezzar, whether it was Belshazzar, whether it's now Darius, all of them have been appointed and been put there by God. Whether it's Pharaoh or anyone else. So as people who believe in God, as people who trust God, they are called forth to surrender and be humble before God and before men. It says these battles, they are not yours to fight. They are not yours to fight. Don't hold the truth. Don't pretend before men, but be humble. When you give thanks, pray for your enemies. When you pray for them, you don't pray for someone, then you go fighting or backbiting or speaking evil about them in darkness. When you pray for people, you wish them good. You wish them they enjoy the same kingdom you enjoy, because that's the target of God. That's the target, that all men shall turn away from their evil, shall humble themselves and come before your God. But if you are standing block in between, then Daniel would have been found, although men would have seen Daniel as a glorifying person to God, but before God they would have been found guilty, and these lions would have. So it's very necessary, even though men see you as a humble man, when you are before God, are you a humble man? When you are before God, are you an innocent man? Or before God you are found guilty, but in the eyes of men you are found innocent? It's very important to maintain the same image in and out. There's someone who always says the true character of a man is what he does in darkness, in the absence of everyone. And I say the true character of a man is what you do constantly, whether in darkness or in light. If you do good in light, do good in darkness. If you do, don't do bad. So don't be bad, but don't be good in light and bad in darkness. Maintain the holy worship of God in all circumstances.
It's like putting on a mask.
Yes.
That when you're in the light, you're this person. Yet when you're in the dark,
Yes.
in the cover of night, or in your room, wherever you are,
Yes.
in private, you're an entirely different person. Forgetting that God is a God who sees everything. You know, one of the most direct, perhaps, imagery we can look into is being when you're like a partner to someone. Like when you're in their presence, you're an entirely different person.
Yes.
And then when you're out of their presence, you're then yet another different person.
True.
It causes trouble.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Now what more with God, whom sees everything?
Yes.
And we're told that what is done in the darkness will come to light.
Yeah.
So it's quite important that, you know, we take heed of these advices that we come across, because we've now found that even as we continue reading the Bible and their very obvious teachings, the Bible then forth also requires discernment. It requires for you to take heed of the mistakes of others and learn from them. Take heed of the triumphs of others and learn as to how did they now triumph and were able to now sustain and have God multiply all that they have. You know, so it's quite a massive advice to all of us that we do not just read the Bible as though we're reading a novel for interest's sake, but to ponder on the word, to let it, you know, manifest within us.
Yes.
And unravel with us as we now go through our own private experiences with God.
Interesting.
If you also would like to follow the kingdoms according to the statute that was given to Nebuchadnezzar, now we notice that Daniel, like he had said, that, oh, King Nebuchadnezzar, this is your kingdom. And after your kingdom will come a kingdom that's weaker. That was his son's kingdom. His son's kingdom was divided into two now. It's now for the Medes and Persians. So you can follow it. Now you have already two of the parts of that image. You have the gold is gone. Now we are with the silver, the Medes and the Persians. Then we'll see as we go on. Yeah, so it's a very beautiful insight that we caught from 1 to 6.
Yes.
We've learned quite a lot of lessons, but most of all, we've learned that there's people that carry themselves above God and above the wisdom of God never get anywhere. And we have learned that so long as you stay underneath the presence of God, be a Daniel, be someone who God looks at and smiles, be someone whom people look at and they don't find blame. They try to find it, but they will not find the right blame to put on you. So they rather make something up for you that in turn will even be proved to be wrong.
Yes.
So as long as you stay right, you'll always have the favor of God.
Interesting.
It's a beautiful word that we've received today. And I think to sum it up, the task for each and every one of us today, from what we've now seen from Daniel, is we need to get to a place whereby we learn to pray for our enemies, that we may ask the Lord to help them do better, that God may increase goodness within them, because there is light in everybody, in as much as we also were born with sin. So I urge everyone, even ourselves, to take time, a few minutes in today, and to take note of the people whom we regard as our enemies, and we pray for them. We pray for a change within them, and watch how this prayer will also open up doors for you in return.
Oh, interesting. To conclude, let's say that Psalm 51, the one of King David, where it says, "Cast me not away from thy presence, O God, but renew thy spirit." Oh, I think this is it.
51, right?
Yes. And renew thy spirit within me. Cast me not away from your presence, O Lord. Restore unto me the joy of thy salvation, and renew thy spirit within me. And renew thy spirit within me. Let's pray. Our Father who art in heaven, we thank you for your word that cometh throughout these days and the mornings. We thank you for chapter 1 to chapter 6, where you teach us how to stick and abide by your word day and night, that you may be exalted on earth and in heaven. Lord, we come and ask you to come and visit and examine our hearts, that everything that glorifies ourselves, that anything that builds pride within us is taken away, that we may be humble before your presence, that we may do to glorify your name, that nothing that hinders our worship from you, that nothing that makes us pretenders, that makes us people who are unfit for your kingdom, may be taken away from us, Jesus. We pray even for the viewers, wherever they are, may you teach your word, may they have experience with you, may they develop a personal relationship with you, that these words that they read may not be just stories, but may be words that show experience, that teach them the ways to follow you, Jesus. We thank you and we bless your name. We pray all this believing in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. See you next time. Keep on viewing.